Assalamu alaikum. To introduce myself, I have been homeschooling now. If I actually put a date to it, it's been 20 years of homeschooling because my oldest is 25 this year. Alhamdulillah. So we started homeschooling when, of course, Layla was I think her kids were in kindergarten or just starting, or they had they'd come from out of kindergarten and started homeschooling, right? First grade. When we started homeschooling, there were about maybe 3 or 4 Muslim families that we knew of who were homeschooling. And so when I see this number here, see the number of people who are part of the East Bay homeschoolers and what Rima started the Silicon Valley homeschoolers, just in the Bay Area, and then we look at the number of Muslim homeschoolers globally, it is astounding. And it really it raises my spirits because it shows the value that each one of us has, not just for education, but for preserving our children and our deen. And that's the key. We start off with all different reasons to homeschool. For us, our journey to homeschooling, because I'm an educator by training. I was trained as a teacher. I taught in the public schools. I taught in a private school. I taught as a substitute teacher. I've been through that whole gamut. When we purchased our home in Hayward, and again, this is over 25 years ago, the first thing that our real estate agent said was, "Why Hayward? That is a horrible school district." And everybody was like, "Why would you buy a home in a place," well, it was only affordable for us there, but why would you buy a home in a place where education, which is supposed to be kind of the foundation of why you purchase homes in these expensive neighborhoods, was so poor? And, at that point I laughed and said, "Oh, it doesn't matter, we're going to homeschool." And, because all of our neighbors on our street had their children in private Catholic high schools, which is what that area was known for, was really good, strong private Catholic high schools, because it was built by the Portuguese immigrant community. Right? Nobody paid attention to the public school there. And so when we started homeschooling over 25 years ago, a lot of people asked, "Why would you be homeschooling?" And I know this is probably something that was already covered, but our own family members asked us, and we had particular family members who brought up the fact that as immigrants into America, you come to the country that has, quote unquote, the best education system, and you pull your children out of the education system. What's wrong with you? You're not going to educate your children. You're going to pull them out of the system. And to that, one of the things, initially, of course, we were at the charter school, so we were able to kind of say, no, but they're at this school. You see, there's a name attached to it. But I now have the confidence to turn around and ask people when they say this, because a lot of people, as I consult with homeschoolers, not just across the Bay Area or the United States or Canada, but across the globe, because now, alhamdulillah, homeschooling or home education has become a global phenomenon. There are people all across the globe that are choosing to homeschool. Manisha's right here, and she's homeschooling in Turkey, right? So we've got people all across the globe that are homeschooling, and they all still get the same question or similar questions, which is, why would you choose to go off grid, if you will, and pull your children out of a system that has produced the likes of, Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or, all of these amazing people who make this country move, and you're taking that away from your children? And, one of the things that I would always respond to is, and how many of you here, just by show of hands, are immigrants or first generation? Okay. All right. So you know what I mean. I always ask, I'm like, how many of to our parents, how many of you would put your children in a public school back in Jordan, or a public school in Pakistan, a government-run school in India? How many would do that? And none of them would say we would. Because even back home, they would put their children, or our parents did, in a private school. We would not be in the government school. But when it comes to America, we don't think twice about the government school, which is the public school. right? We don't equate the two. And sometimes it is recognizing that it's not the same. A government-run school, which is free, and my mom always used to say there's no such thing as free, including fat-free yogurt and fat-free dressing. There's nothing free in life. You get what you pay for, right? And so some people choose to pay for their homes and thereby the schools, and others choose to pay, as we all have seen, with our sweat, blood, and tears into our children's education. But I will also preface this by saying, whatever you do, and this is a new epiphany for me, okay? And this one's new because, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due. This one's from my husband because I do have that anxiety, fear, whatever you want to call it. As moms, we all do. What if? And oh my gosh! And where did we? And what happened? Why? And all of those things that we all think about, especially when you're alone, or especially when something doesn't work out the way we think it's going to work out, and we all have those thoughts. And I kind of started this with my husband. I was like, so what exactly did I do wrong when? And he said, stop. And he's always been a good check, and everyone knows this. I'm going to move this closer because I'm going to sit back for a little bit. But he said, stop. This is not about what you did or did not do, what I did or did not do. It's not about that. At this point, it is about, did we do our best with the best of the intentions? Because the outcome's from Allah. We could do everything right. We could have done our best, killing ourselves in the process, and the outcome may not be what we expect. And we may never, in some cases, see the outcome of our actions and our intentions. So don't focus on the outcome. Focus on your intention and the day-to-day actions. So I'm going to start with that because I was kind of like, subhanAllah, yeah. If I've done everything I was supposed to do, the outcome is truly in Allah's hand. All right? So I say this because homeschooling high school is a different beast in itself. It's a beautiful journey. I'm not going to lie. It is a beautiful journey, but it is quite different than the amazing, lovely little ones who are awed by everything you say and do, who are enthralled by your stories, who can cuddle with you and want to bake with you, or are happy just running up on the hill and pulling trees and creating their little bird nests. This is a whole another game. And we need to be really ready to, tackle what comes at that point. So a couple of things that I'm going to talk about today is, again, very quickly, why even homeschool high school? Because people ask me this. All right, I get it. First 7 years, you play with them. Next 7 years, you teach them, you train them. But then after that, come on, they're going to live in this world. Aren't you going to ever leave them, put them out? How are they going to grow up and deal with society? Now's that time, right? Why aren't they in a school? Why aren't they interactive? Come on. So let's define our why, because that's really what's going to help you navigate forward. Your why, the purpose. The second, what are our options if I'm going to choose to homeschool high school? I will be the first to admit there's no way on earth I'm going to be able to teach calculus. No way. All right? And there's no way I'm turning my kitchen into another chemistry lab. So how are we doing this? Let's look at those options. There's this buzzword in California called dual enrollment that I'm sure a lot of you have heard, especially if you're looking at high school. So let's demystify that. What is that? All right. Exit exams, tests, wait, what? What are we talking about? We learn for the sake of knowledge and learning. Where do these time tests come about? We tell our kids, take your time, do what you have to with ihsan and beauty, and we do this for the first 12, 14 years, and all of a sudden we're like, wait, no, come on, SAT test. What's happening? How do we kind of navigate those? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then college. Oh my God, this big C word. I mean, didn't all our parents or this generation come to the United States for the amazing higher ed? Harvards and the Yales and the Stanfords, and you're in California, whether you've got UC Berkeley, Stanford, UCSF, you got St. Mary, all the amazing colleges here, and then what are you going to do? You're a homeschooler? How are you going to get to college? That's a big question. We'll answer that. And then finally, I don't want to sugarcoat, so I will go over both the pros and the cons of homeschooling high school. All right. Alhamdulillah, I've been able to graduate 3 out of my 4 homeschoolers. 3 out of 4 have done high school, completed high school, and graduated high school. My youngest is a sophomore now, and inshallah, I'm debating whether he should finish this year or next year, but he'll be done soon enough. 2 out of the 3 are done with college. Third one is a senior in college. So, alhamdulillah, it's doable. It's possible. And then you've seen Layla, her kids, mashallah, right? And then, of course, Maria's kids. And these are just some of the people right here in this room whose kids were homeschooled, have gone through college, in Maria's case and Layla's case, even married and settled. So proof that homeschooling can lead to somewhat normalized kids, right? All right. Okay. So why homeschool in high school? You know how in the early years there's the 3 R's? Anybody know what are the 3 R's of elementary, or what are the 3 R's of school? What do they teach in school? There you go, reading, writing, arithmetic. For those for the early years. When you're in high school, the 3 R's change to rigor, religion, and relevance. If any of you here have been in a public high school, or a lot of you here could have graduated from schools here, you know there's no rigor in public high schools. Right? You can choose the rigor that you want, and you can choose to tone it down as per the needs of your child when you homeschool. So that's where that kind of the elasticity of rigor comes in when you homeschool. There are lots of non-Muslim Indian families that I consult with, Indian families that I consult with for homeschooling, who reach out for consulting services, not because, they don't like, they're in America too, first generation, come here as immigrant parents, but they don't like the lack of rigor in public schools. Because when they compare their children to their cousins or their siblings' children back in India, their Indian nieces and nephews are able to speak multiple languages, read and write in multiple languages, do a lot more math and science, and even English. The rigor is much higher back in India, for instance, than here. All right, and they look at that and go, I'm in Dublin or I'm in Danville, and the public school system is supposed to be the best here. I'm in Ardenwood. We are paying these millions of dollars for our homes, and the public school system is not serving us well, because my Indian nieces and nephews are way ahead in 8th grade than my high schooler. And they're looking at homeschooling because it's not good enough. Because there, a 6th grader is doing civics and biology and physics and chemistry and math, which is at calculus level, in 6th or 7th grade. And here, we can't, and our basic graduation requirements in the state of California for math is Algebra 1. All right? Simple. So rigor is missing. Mashallah, Sister Layla talked, from what I heard, amazingly about building a love for your religion all the way from the time they're basically born, even before you read the Quran and your kids in the womb are listening to it. There's this love of religion that you're building, living it in your home, cultivating this, nurturing this all the way through. And then when your children go to, say, a public high school, or even, unfortunately, today's day and age, even the so-called parochial schools or, Catholic high schools or Protestant high schools, they're not necessarily truly teaching the faith as it would be. There are lots of, it has been diluted for ease, for instance. And your children are put into these schools. All of that, all those years of hard work that you've made are kind of put to the test at that point. But also understand your children are only 14. 14. Or if that's high school age, right, for your kids, they're only 14 years old. They're one against many. They're not as articulate. And this is the time when their brain is also beginning to question a lot of things developmentally. They've now entered, beyond the grammar stage into the logic stage, if you will. You cannot throw your children into the ocean and say, don't get wet. We cannot send our children to go fight against the zeitgeist of the day. Whatever is being taught in the schools, and tell them to stand up for your deen and stand up and talk. Come on. How many of our own spouses or ourselves, if we are working at work, will deny a Jummah meeting and say, nope, sorry, I'm not going to take this meeting, boss, because I got work, I got a prayer to go to, I'm not taking this meeting. Everybody is going to try to find the time when they can make it to Jummah and still make the meeting. But we expect our children to really go out there and fight this battle for us. This is the time when, and unfortunately, and this is something, because I just came from the Zaytuna College K-12 summit that's going on, which is why I was late, and which is why I'm going to run, and which is why I'm kind of going, and not going to stay the whole time, so I apologize. But one of the things that I heard Dr. Ali Atai say today was, there was a time, especially when all of us were in school, right? God was definitely taken out of the curriculum of public school. We all know this, right? It was not a theistic classroom, but an atheistic classroom. A classroom where God was removed, separation of God and state. We all heard that. But this day and age, where our children are in school, unfortunately, it's not even an atheistic classroom. It's an anti-theistic classroom, which is truly diabolical. Our children are not being taught, don't talk about God. They're actually being taught God is God is wrong. Do not believe in God. It's a very direct attack on any religion. So you are saying, well, you Muslim child, sweet child of mine, raised with all of the love of the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran in your heart, now go fight this battle. And I ask a question to people who call me, because and it's very, very heartbreaking when I have parents call and reach out for consulting services and say, how do I save my child? He's about to graduate high school, but he's transitioning. This is in Muslim families. This is not unheard of. How do I save my child? My child has been cutting herself and we did not find out. She's now 17. This has been going on for years. Muslim families, how do I save my child? Can I homeschool now? This is a day-to-day conversation. It is very, very difficult to listen to those conversations. And then there are moms and dads who are well established in their careers, in their homes, and there's a completely different world happening between them and their children. And they're not aware. So religion is of utmost importance. And understand that when you put your children in public school, they're in an anti-God world. And the third reason to homeschool high school is the relevance. Learning, education, family, religion, all of it becomes relevant in high school. Because up until high school, your children are learning to read, learning to compute, learning to think, learning to speak. From high school on, now they're reading to learn. They're speaking to learn. I mean, they're not, the skills are there. Now they're utilizing those skills for the world. So what they were learning to read, now they're going to be reading all sorts of things to learn new knowledge. That's where the flipped model comes in, if you will. Because the skills have been taught. But now the acquisition of knowledge will begin. So make it relevant. School, unfortunately, has more and more so become irrelevant. Because in a public school, for instance, I don't care which school district, public schools will allow you to use your phones, your smartphones, to do your research, to use AI to write your papers. So we are actually training our kids in the guise of using technology, training them to not use their brain. AI has only been out a few years, if that. There's research that shows kids or adults who use AI to do their tasks faster, write things and whatever, after a while are unable to write complete paragraphs on their own. All right? Because everything is a skill and a muscle. You have to keep using it. And you don't use it, you lose it. I also heard another really scary thing, stat, number, story, whatever you will, where Hafiz of Quran are leaving the deen. Quran in their heart, and they have left Islam. Why? Because when they're in public school, when they're in college, when they're in university, they do not have the answers to the questions that they're faced with, and the parents are calling, going, we've spent so many years, and well, now they're adults. They can make their decisions. So again, not to scare you, but to remind you of yes, you're facing challenges, but it's almost like choose your challenge. Which one would you rather have? Right? These are, and again, but this point in time, by the time high school rolls around, if you've been homeschooling, or if you're just coming to homeschool now, because, alhamdulillah, your kids were in Islamic school all the way up until 8th grade, this was great, but starting now, you don't have an option, so you're looking to homeschool high school, alhamdulillah. Understand there are going to be some challenges, things are going to be a little difficult, but know that high school and homeschooling in high school doesn't mean you're in the driver's seat. Now, your child is in the driver's seat. You're sitting behind them, just like in a driver's ed class. All right? And that's really good because by the time they're in high school, 15, 16, now they're getting their permits and learning to drive. But think of it that way. You are not here to teach them the chemistry and the calculus and the physics. No, you're here to help provide the right teachers, tutors, resources for them to learn. So that's why I say you're here to facilitate their learning more than necessarily teach every subject. All right? So facilitate their learning, make it possible for them. If you have been homeschooling all the way through, by now your kids are telling you, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, and you're just, helping kind of facilitate that. If you're just getting into it, it may seem a little inundating because you're just starting to homeschool, but you can still do it, of course, working with them. You will get to that point. All right? And guess what? There are lots of ways to do it. And I don't know if this was covered already, but the PSA, and so that was already covered. All of these still apply. You can homeschool by filing a private school affidavit and going completely independently. You can totally do that. And it's, again, nobody's saying this is one or the other is easier. For some people, a charter seems really easy because they tell you what to do. They have online classes. They keep your transcript. For some, it is too restrictive, right? For some, being with the local school district is what they want. The school district gives me everything, like COIL gives me everything. I go in once a week, get the whole package from COIL. The teacher gives it to me, and then I just sit here teaching my child the whole week, go back again the next week, turn it in, get the new package. For some people, that works, right? And for others, being completely online, doing K-12 or CAVA works. I'm not here to say one is better than the other because you need to know your bandwidth, your child's interests, your family situation, and that's a very personal and independent decision compared to anybody else in the room. The goal here is that you're facilitating the best learning possible for your child. And know that there are lots of options out there. Some people love this middle college, and is that even showing? Okay, maybe not, concurrent or middle college path. Because some school districts have what they call a middle college, where you are part of their high school, and then for 11th and 12th grade, you take all your classes on the college campus, a local community college campus. So they have that in some school districts. It's called a middle college path. But that's also very doable when you do it independently with the PSA. Shh. All right. But again, the same options that you had from kindergarten through 8th grade apply for high school. In fact, it's a bit more. You have a little bit more. Why? Because I'm not for an online learning environment for kids until that age. But when they come to high school, yes, you can even open that option up for your kids. That's why you have more options. Okay. What works, what doesn't work? We've talked about the pros. Everybody here has talked about the pros of homeschooling. It's the same for high school. Personalized and tailored curriculum, right? We've talked about this over and over. I don't think there's anything new left for me to say other than this is a time where, like some people, ramp it up and their kids are doing, college level work. And I do know of families whose kids have, done a complete college education for high school. And that's possible. And I've also know of families who've used this time to ramp it down educationally so that they can finish their HIVs. Right? Kids have taken 4 years of high school to complete their HIVs and also graduated and then gone on to college. I've also know of families who've had to ramp it down because kids are having mental health breakdowns and they've been pulled out of high school because they're suicidal. And this is all happening in Muslim families. So don't think we are not prone to any of this. So again, that you own and you have that knob in your hand. Ramp it up, tone it down, as the needs of your children are. But know your child. Know yourself first, know your child, know your family situation. If you've got aging elderly parents in your home that you're taking care of, and multiple children, and you're trying to homeschool, and your health is up and down, and your husband's job is up and down, your pathway to homeschooling may be very different than someone who's got one child, stable income, stable home, no other things around them. So do not compare. And we think this is all simple and easy, but we all fall into that comparison mode. So stop comparing. But know that you can personalize and tailor that curriculum for your children when you're homeschooling, especially in high school. Simple example, my daughter took Urdu as a foreign language when she was in high school. Why? Because she liked to. She liked Urdu. All right? It's not one of the foreign languages that you would normally pick and learn when you're in high school in the US here. But that was her choice. She chose it. Right? And it was possible because we were homeschooling. The opportunity to explore diverse experiences. I cannot talk about this enough because a lot of times kids graduate high school and then we ask them, or as they're getting ready to finish high school, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to study? What's up? What's next? Up until 12th grade, we all have a plan. But after that, come on. Doctor? Engineer? Lawyer? What's it going to be? And a lot of times kids are super confused because they're like, I don't know. How am I supposed to decide what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I haven't really explored anything. So this is that time to explore, to really see, what do you want to do? Another real life example, one of my sons, I'm not going to say who, but it's good that I have 3 and so nobody will figure out who. If I said my daughter, everybody will know exactly who. So one of my sons decided to do a coding class because in his mind he was going to be a software engineer. and he took a coding class. And he did this coding class in 8th grade. Did not do well in that class at all. Hated it. Although the teacher was great. She was, a really nice... I'm going to give it away. So no, I'm going to stop there. It wasn't the fault of the teacher or the curriculum, but he did not like it. Right? And so it was a chance for him to try something and decide this is not for me before getting too far into it. That's what I mean by saying explore diverse experiences. I know of homeschooled families whose children in high school have started and successfully run baking businesses. And some of us have benefited from her baking business. She's now finishing up her degree in culinary arts at Laney College. All right. I know of people, of kids in high school who've had, and he's actually this year right now, finishing up his internship at MIT in molecular biology and research. High schooler. Homeschooled. Right? I know of others who've been able to do other internships. I know some who've been able to do, while in high school, start, run, crash and burn as well, but do, this is my son again, have his own automotive repair business. Right? And that was a whole circle. And also, it's the experience, trying things. And I know people who've explored and got into photography. So building of these hobbies that they probably pursued as hobbies or things that they enjoyed as kids, they really get to explore it now. Go deep. Do you really like ceramics and want to own a pottery studio and get into ceramics? Or no, that's actually, I just enjoyed it, but what was that? The Color Me Mine was great, but I'm not really into it anymore. Right? This is the time to try to explore and to decide, if you will, what you want to do. I'm not even going to talk about strong family bonds because we all know this. If you're with somebody 24/7, guess what? You'll get to like them, or you'll learn how to work with them, or work around them. But it'll work itself out. All right, and they've all already talked about that one. But the other amazing thing about high school is flexible schedules. Studies now are showing high schoolers need more sleep because their brains are growing, developing, and they need more sleep, especially in the early morning hours. And you can actually afford that when you're homeschooling, so you don't have to be up and out of the house for a 7 a.m. class in a public high school. All right, those are just a few. There are lots more, but we'll leave it at that. But at the same time, what are some of the gaps or the cons? Well, there are potentials for gaps in learning. Absolutely, there are potentials for gaps in learning. But can anybody tell me if there's like a, absolutely 100% foolproof high school diploma or a high school program where there are no gaps in learning? Yeah, I didn't think that existed either. So, yeah, there are going to be gaps in learning. But guess what? I know it's supposed to be a con, but I'm still going to spin this over. It is a gap in learning, and there can be. There were times when, and this is somebody I look up to in the community who gave me this advice years ago, when I said, when my kids were at that point getting into middle school, and I was like, oh my God, what if I cannot teach this? And I asked her, and she said, Shaheen, even if you cannot teach it, you're giving them enough tools and love of the subject matter, of learning, that even if they're 35, they will choose to learn it then. You don't have to teach it, and because guaranteed, and I, alhamdulillah, was blessed to be able to teach all of my kids, or homeschool all of my kids, from pre-kindergarten. Well, we're all homeschooling from the time they're born, but let's leave that one alone. From kindergarten or TK all the way through high school. All right? Been able to do that. Yet, I cannot say that I taught them everything. And that will be the same for any one of us and any school. There'll always be things to learn. And there'll always be gaps in their learning. But the goal is that they at least love learning enough that they won't shy away from picking up and reading something, won't run away when something changes and new things come about, and they can actually learn for themselves. That is the goal, and that should be the goal. All right? So gaps for learning, sure, fine, fill it. Right? And you fill it yourself. There were gaps in our education. Like Layla said, there was gaps in even the Dini education. But she filled them perfectly fine for herself. At some point, your children have to take responsibility. Just like there's the age of tamīz and there's the age of responsibility, at some point your kids have to take responsibility for their learning. And they will, but you have to empower them to do that. There are definitely resource limitations when you are homeschooling, but that's all, with anything, right? There's going to be resource as in time limitations when your kid's in high school from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then having to go for basketball practice or soccer practice or whatever, and they don't show up and then they have to come. There's always going to be some resource limitation. Again, choose your battle. Choose your playing ground. What resource are you okay with having limited? In Urdu, there's a shair or a line which is "Kabhi kisi ko mukammil jahan nahi milta." Nobody gets the whole world. You're not going to get everything, right? So make do with what you have, and choose what you're going to let go of. Right? College admission concerns is a big one, because a lot of times people go, how do we do this? How do I get my kid into college? That's why in the Bay Area, there are consultants who charge up to $30,000 to help go through the paperwork with you and still say we cannot guarantee admission into any college. And people pay. People pay. It's not, 30 is actually on the lower end. Yeah. So again, there's this fear. Because again, we have lost our purpose. Because the purpose for education, in most people's mind, is utilitarian. I educate for a job. Who will marry my son if he doesn't have a job and he cannot provide for his family? Our education is not for true knowledge. It is to get a job. If it is to get a job, why are you even bothering with an education? Because right now, the two are not correlating. In this day and age, they're not correlating. So, again, go back to your purpose. The degree I got and the work I do, the job I do now, or the role that I have now, not as the education consultant, but what I do in my day job, because this I do for my passion, my day job, that career didn't exist when I was in college. And that's what your kids will be faced with. In the next 10, 20 years, the job market is going to change so drastically, you don't know and we cannot imagine what jobs will be existent at that point or what won't. So teach them to learn. So if the world goes topsy-turvy, which with all the things happening, who knows what will happen, they can still land on their feet and pick up a skill, pick up a job, learn, and be resilient. Not be like quite a few people, adults, that I've also heard of, who will go deep into depression because they got laid off or their job market was now outsourced somewhere. Right? If we are teaching them a love of learning, if we are teaching them taqwa, Allah is the provider. Keep that purpose in mind all the way through. Allah is always your provider. He's always been your provider. Then why all of a sudden in high school do we worry about, will our child get a job after college? And how will they get into college? Like, come on. Your kids are picking this up as well. Stick to one story. All right? Socialization limitations. High school is a time when a lot of kids feel this. I don't think that really is, maybe I'm wrong, but my kids will tell me that. You haven't heard any friends. Oh, gosh, man, you had 50 kids at your birthday party. What do you mean you had no friends? Right? Where are these kids coming from? We have the MCC we host the homeschoolers iftar here every year. How many families do we have, Yasmin? Oh, no, and our kids have no friends. And that was on a weeknight. The East Bay Muslim Homeschoolers has over 300 families now, right? But no, we have no friends. So we keep bringing this up. Socialization, socialization, socialization. I feel it's like over-socialization. I'm drained. So I don't understand this whole I don't have friends thing, because my youngest one is, he's got so many friends, and, now in the past when my oldest one was wanting to play basketball, they didn't, like as a homeschooler, you didn't have a basketball group, you couldn't find 10 boys to play basketball with. Now you've got AAU basketball thingies. You got the Bay Area, what is that? BAMREC, Bay Area Muslim Recreation Group, where they have homeschooling basketball groups and soccer groups. And we have so many resources now. It's not that there isn't. So I should take that out of the cons, but maybe the con is that it's over-socialization and not limitation. So I don't think that is an issue. Okay, let's talk about how do you finish. All right, you did it. You're homeschooled. You're homeschooling high school. You've come here. What's the exit strategy? All right. I want to identify that there's two different ways to complete or to exit out of, to finish secondary education in California. One is a completion process. One is a graduation process. All right. And I'm going to identify them as two different means. To complete secondary education in the state of California, where you get a certificate of completion, not a high school diploma. This is the process on the left of my screen. You pass the HiSET exam, which is an exam offered by the California Department of Education. You register online, you pay your $45, you take it, it's offered twice a year. Your child will go into a testing center just like you did for SAT, ACT kind of testing centers. And it used to be, in the past, it used to be called a CHESP. It used to be called the California High School Proficiency Exam. It's changed now since 2022 or 2023. It's called the HiSET. So they've kind of amped it up a little bit more. There's a minimum reading, writing. You have to write an essay and pass Algebra 1. If you can do all of that, and you've completed 10th grade or you're 16 years old, you pass the HiSET, you get your certificate of completion of secondary education stamped by the California Department of Education, and you're done. That's it. All right? Now that is a completion strategy. This limits you to apply to a four-year college directly, which means getting the certificate and being 16, you cannot turn around and apply to Stanford or San Jose State. Okay? But it does not stop you from going to a community college and then transferring to the same colleges. All right? So it's completion. It's the same as if you were coming from India or Pakistan and you had finished 10th or SSLC and you came over. They won't put you in 11th grade even if you're 16. Your certificate of secondary education completion is valid. All right? Same thing. Graduation is different. Graduation means you have actually done a little bit more. You can do this independently. You can do this through a charter. You can do this through an ISP. You can do this through CAVA K-12. You can do it whichever way. Graduation means you finish the high school graduation requirements that the California Department of Education has established, which is 3 years of English, 2 years of math, including Algebra 1, 2 years of science, including lab sciences, 3 years of history, 2 years of PE, 1 year of a foreign language or a visual performing arts, and 1 year of ethnic studies, depending, moving forward from here on. So you keep tab of all of these requirements, and when your child has completed all of these, then you can actually graduate. Now, through a charter school, has a little bit more, because charter school, just like any public school, will ask you to have a few more classes. Or if you are independently homeschooling, as long as you've met this, you've got enough credits to graduate your student. Okay, that's a high school diploma. All right? So again, two separate paths depending on what your goals are, which is why I keep asking, what's the purpose that you're homeschooling? right? Sometimes people who are homeschooling and their focus is health, they'll be like, I just want to, the lowest, whatever that you can give me that's not going to take my child's time away, because they're doing 4 to 5 hours of door, and then they have another 2 or 3 hours of repeat and revision. They do not have time for all of these other things. I just want to make sure that they do that properly. We'll catch up with the other stuff later. Sure. There are others who are like, I'm going to do the least amount here because I'm going to want to do something else. I'm doing something more. I'm doing something other. So know, again, the reason and the purpose, and that'll make your path easier. It's almost like, Google Maps. You start off by giving the destination and it finds you the best way there. Same thing. This word, dual enrollment, I'm sure you all heard about. Especially if you've done anything with high schoolers. California is one of the only states that allows this, but it makes it so much easier. Just like public school is free in California, therefore charter schools, which is the top way people homeschool, is free in California because it's a public school, right? Same way, community colleges are also free in California. This was a recent bill that Obama had passed. Right? So the first 2 years of college are free especially if you are a high school enrolled student. So if you are enrolled in a public high school, charter high school, PSA, independent high school, whichever way you choose it, you can take community college classes for free. All right? This is if you are under 18 years of age. Because after 18, you're no longer considered a high schooler. If you don't have a diploma, then you would get a GED. It won't be a diploma, right? So you can take community college classes. And so you take community college classes and get both college credit and high school credit, double dipping. All right? Your high school is free. You don't have to do the science lab at home, right? They'll actually go off and do the science lab in a proper lab. So that's dual enrollment. It saves you money. It saves them time, because if they are taking this class in college, they don't have to repeat it when they're doing it for a bachelor's, because it's already on the bachelor's path. Right? With me? It does help prepare children for college success because you're taking college classes. A lot of families call me going, well, I want to homeschool my child. I want my child to take this college class, but is that AP? Because all of their friends in high school are taking AP classes, or all of our neighbors are taking AP classes. And I'm like, okay, what does AP mean? AP means advanced placement. Yeah, okay, for what end? What's the purpose of that? Anybody? Why did you take an AP class? So you get college credits, right? You take the whole year of an AP course, so you can take the AP exam, and then if you pass it with a 3 or higher, you get college credit. Hold on, but what are we doing with the dual enrollment? College credit. But I don't know why a lot of people will not see that one-to-one correlation. And I keep getting asked this question. So if they take college classes, can they get AP credit? And I keep having to remind them they're doing more than AP credit. Right? But also, the other amazing thing is that they get to explore different academic interests. Right? They can take that EMT course and decide if they want to be a paramedic or not. They can take that dental hygienist course and decide, nope, dentistry is not for me. I cannot look down people's throats. Sorry. Sarah's a dentist, if you guys don't know. And I didn't even realize it until after I looked at her and go, nope, that's... right? Or you look at people who take an early childhood class and go, no way am I ever going to teach. My kids have said that. I mean, they're like, nope, I'm not teaching. I'm not doing that. And I get this all the time where my daughter is always asked, by her aunt to babysit, and she's always like, because my nieces and my nephews they're pretty decent kids. They're not like loud, rambunctious, naughty kids, but my daughter's like, why does she always ask me to babysit? You know, like she's not into. I don't ever see her as a teacher. Like, no way. That's not going to be her path, right? But at least you get to explore and try that. And guess what? It's for free. Like my mom said, nothing's free, but yeah, it is. This is, on one level, it's free. There are other issues. Some of the issues, let's see why not, right? Is your 14-year-old able to handle this workload? And this is where you knowing your child becomes so important, right? Because guess what? Algebra 1, they want to take it in college. Such a great idea. They can just do, or chemistry. They can just do chemistry in the lab over there, and they can do it. Absolutely. It's a high school chemistry class. They get credit for it. They're doing 1 year's worth in one semester. They're not being taught like a 15-year-old. They're being taught like an adult. So their classmates could be veterans. Their classmates could be homemakers who've come back in their 30s. Their classmates could be a 50-year-old. They're competing against all of them. Keep that front and center before you sign your child up for a community college class. Know that when your child is signed up for a community college class, which is free and oh my God, it's wonderful, some can handle it and do it really well. Some do not, which is again, do you know your child? All right. So workload management is huge. The second is, of course, age-appropriate content. Is your 15-year-old, who's been, mashallah, sheltered and has so much all the way backing up, ready to sit there and have these discussions in English literature class about topics that are not necessarily appropriate or age-appropriate? Right? And that's something you definitely want to take into consideration before you just sign them up randomly. Also understand that if your child takes and fails a college class that goes on their college transcript, not just their high school transcript, you can probably brush off that high school transcript, but it does stay on their college transcript. So when they're looking to transfer and get into medical school, that, if it brought down their GPA, is still brought down their GPA. All right? So don't just glossy paint this in your mind and go, this is so amazing, I got everything for free, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Be ready to deal with the repercussions. All right? So that's a huge thing to keep in mind. My son, I remember him telling me, he said, one of my sons told me, he said recently, you put me in this college class when I didn't even realize what I was doing. And I'm like, well, you took the class. And he's like, yeah, and I would not have had this B on my transcript if it weren't for that class. And it was an easy A, okay? His brother took the same class with him. His brother got the A. His brother actually told him, it's like, this is the last assignment, just log in and do it. And he's like, I don't care. I'm so done. And he chose not to. That was the only B on his transcript. And he said, I wasn't even 14. I was like, yeah, you are almost 14. So seriously, get on. But point being, he felt bad about it after the fact, right? They don't have that presence of mind then. They can't see that at that point. So make sure you see it for them, right? And then, of course, the logistical challenges of a dual enrollment are real. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, guess what? Your child, as amazing, as bright, as important, as loving, as all of those things for you, is not a priority for the community college. He's not, or she's not. So you may want your child to take this class and you're doing everything you want to get them into the class. They're on the bottom of the totem pole. The first priority is going to be the full-time enrolled college students who are paying for those classes. And then after that, the part-time. And then after that, the public school kids, and then all these kids. And then your homeschooler is the last in their priority list. So be very, very ready to get rejected and not get into classes. To be on a wait list. My son was on a wait list for 3 classes. He only got into 1 this summer. He didn't even make it the other two. And I didn't think those were like going to be classes that are so full. It was like an intro to engineering, exploring engineering or something. He didn't make it. He was waitlist 6 and he was still waitlist 6. And he would check every day and he was still waitlist 6. He's like, this waitlist is not moving. So understand that those are logistical challenges that you should be ready and able to support. Okay? So just saying, oh, my child's going to do all of high school through community college, not as simple as that. This is also one of the reasons why people choose to exit out early if they know their kid's going to community college. They're like, I'm not going to spend 4 years doing high school work. I'm going to exit them out so they can become full-time college students at the community college and take all those classes, and they don't have to wait on this totem pole of a waiting list. Right? But you can absolutely do that. But understand that once your child has completed secondary education, college education is not free. They are a full-time college student. Unless it's need-based and financial, it's not free. So some people are like, okay, I will jump through the hoops because those classes are free and I need those classes to be free. There are others who are like, nope, not jumping through any hoops. I want them gone and they want to be gone and they want to be doing it. Again, know your situation, know your child, know the outcome you're looking at. I only have 5 minutes. Okay, that's fine. I am going to wrap up. College. What about college? People always ask, how do you get, how are homeschool kids going to get to college? There are multiple roads to getting to college. Don't think that, oh, I have to get, my child has to have all of these things. No, your child can go to college and graduate. This is America, all right? This is not back home where once you're 30 or 25, you cannot enter a college classroom. All right? This is not like that. You can be learning at any point. Recently, somebody I know, she's 68 and she just finished her PhD. Right? And I mean, but she had to wait until all her kids graduated before she would go back to school. So, point is, there's no time limit or expiration date. First of all, there's no rush either. This is a lesson I learned very recently. Okay, it's easier for me to say now because I was always in a rush. Like, maybe because I wanted to be done. But many routes to getting to college. You can go to community college and transfer. California has an amazing program where you can go to a community college, whether 15, 16, 17, 14, 18, whatever age. You can complete 2 years of your degree at a community college, and they have a transfer admission guarantee called a tag with multiple UC and CSUs in the state, which means that if you're a good student, maintain your grades in community college and finish 2 years, you can transfer with the guarantee into certain UCs. All right, so that's pretty much saying your pathway to college is guaranteed. And still we worry. All right, I'll also preface that by saying there's no guaranteed admission to UC Berkeley or Stanford or UCLA or UC San Diego. Got it. But your chances are just as good as any other transfer. Okay, so that's one. Private colleges are always an option. All right. Public colleges, where if you were to finish your 4 years, graduate high school, take your SATs, take your ACTs, do all the things that you would like a public school, you can go off and apply directly to a 4-year college, and you can go that route as well. Sometimes we underestimate or really don't even think about technical training. There are some people who are not interested in a college degree. And we really just kind of, I mean, all these years that we spend telling our children, do what you want, learn for the love of learning, and then all of a sudden we flip the switch on them because now we want them to become doctors and engineers, and they have to catch up with everybody else who's been kind of going through that grind from kindergarten. So really understand, what are you wanting from them? Don't give them these dual messages. All right? And sometimes they are about just technical training. Maybe they want to be a welder or an auto mechanic. And there's nothing wrong about working with your hands. All right? We always go, they're not going to make a living being a plumber. Well, some of the wealthiest people in this area, in the Bay Area, are actually people who work with their hands. All right? We don't think about that, but ever get some work done in your home? They're busy, they're overscheduled, they don't have time for you, whether you're asking for a landscaper or a plumber, and you're like, fine, I don't care. Yes, $500, just please mow the lawn. Right? So, mm-hmm. Yep. And this is what you would do when you're in high school and explore. Because you can try internships, you can do work study, you can just be an apprentice, learn how to do beautiful calligraphy or woodwork. Your kids have done that. Right? Exploring those options and seeing what exists. Because sometimes kids are like, I don't even want to do any work. I don't want to work. So again, if you're like me and outcome focused, that's going to cause a heart attack. Right? But again, sometimes it is about giving them the time and space to find what they want to do. That's where the vocational training, technical training comes in. I know maybe this doesn't apply to all of us, but for a lot of people, the military, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines is an option. And they do go that path. And after their service, they come right back and they finish the degrees. While they're, yeah. And I know quite a few folks who work that I work with who are nuclear operators, and they learned and got all of their training while in the Navy. Right? So again, we always tend to think that the door ends, there's only one linear path. And we have to go that linear path because that's the only linear path we know, we see, and we are familiar with. The world has changed beyond what we, are used to. And we need to be open to different avenues. Work-study programs, my job is in managing state-run apprenticeships. And that's a complete work-study program where you're hired on at 18, you go through 4 years of apprenticeship training to become an electrician. You are paid well while you're a student. You're taught, and as long as you meet and not fall below or fail out, you progress well, and by the time you journey out or graduate, as they call it, you're making $250,000, depending on where you're working. I'm not saying it's the path for everyone. I'm not saying it's an easy path, because yes, there's a lot of rigor in what the work is being done. But I have seen so many of our young people today in debt with a degree in, unfortunately, whatever thing they can find, heavy debt of college degrees and diplomas, no jobs, no prospects, going through and spiraling through depression, or falling out or pulling out of college halfway through, not knowing what they signed up for, or signed up to become a doctor because parents forced them to, and decided that is not what they're going to do, rejecting themselves, rejecting their education, rejecting their families. So again, this is a good time to just pause and reflect, what is that end goal? And find different avenues to make it work. All right? And I'm going to stop there because that's just some of the highlights. But if there's anybody, if I have to unfortunately leave, so I won't be able to stay for the Q&A. But these women here, and of course Maria, who's here, and are more than capable of answering your questions. But should you have anything for me in particular or want to reach out to me, that's my website, soulfulstudies.com. Feel free to visit the website, and that's my email address. Feel free to email me and reach out. And you can always ask me questions, and that shouldn't be an issue. I'm pretty responsive, even on text. All right, so that's that. before I leave, because I am heading back to the Education Summit at Zaytuna, I do want to talk a little bit about this. And I've got the flyers there, and this is, if you don't already know, Zaytuna College has a book club, a monthly book club, which is perfect for your high schoolers, and of course for yourself if you're not part of it. Every month, you are to read a separate or a different book, then log on once a month and have a book club discussion, right? It's part of the 12,000 Strong program, and I definitely want you all to take a look at it. If you haven't heard about this, there are flyers there. You really should. And I don't even know, like, I think you can join with even like $20 a month or $25. I don't know the details, because, but that's like saying, okay, for the cost of, you know, a coffee drink or 2 coffee drinks, that you would get so many amazing books talked about, taught, and then of course online classes, and just the amount of knowledge, and then the circle of intellectual growth that you and your children can benefit from. Because it is called the First Command Book Club for a reason. The first command being the first command given to the Prophet ﷺ, which was to read. Iqra. Right? So it's called the First Command Book Club for that reason. And I highly, highly recommend everyone to join if you haven't already. Right? And then take part in the book clubs. And once you're part of it, even if you're not able to log on that particular day to listen to the live discussion, you have access to watching the recordings. And even if you join now, you have access to all the recordings. And especially when it comes to the classics, right? And Rima talked about teaching her kids in the classical approach and reading classics to our kids. Some of them are tough. Not all of us grew up reading classics. And getting through those it's hard. Like, how do you pick up a Moby Dick that's this thick? Some of us were assigned a lot of these classics in high school, and we just kind of went through the Cliff Notes, and we're not going to lie about that, because that's how we just got our papers done, was the Cliff Notes. But this is an opportunity to hear about the classics, not just from the having read them and talk about them from a classical perspective, but the Islamic perspective. And we've missed that sometimes. And this is where you live and breathe Islam into your day-to-day education, where Islam and the Islamic perspective is not devoid of the Western education. And that's the piece that sometimes we miss. And, there are always, like we said, gaps in our learning, gaps in our own education. So take the opportunities. People always say, well, I don't know how to. Well, here are the resources. Plug into them. It's very hard to read Dostoevsky and go, what? How? What? They're breaking it down for you and giving you the Islamic perspective on that. So, inshallah, you all benefit from that, just like we have, and so many of us here have. So, if you aren't already, join that. And if you need to, there are more flyers there to take and share. But I will stop at that, inshallah.